Hey YouTube, it's been a while, so welcome back to the channel. You know, I work on a lot of boats around here, mainly just for a hobby, but I get asked all the time about my welding setup, and hey, you know, that's a good idea for a video. It's long overdue, so hey, let's get into it. Without further ado, my main love of my life is a Miller-Matic 212. Now, the biggest thing about welding aluminum is having enough amps. Okay, you have to have that power to be able to penetrate aluminum. Steel, no big deal, you can do it with a small machine. However, aluminum dissipates heat like 3 times as fast as steel does, so you need a lot more power. You'll have to go to millerwelds.com and look at the specifics on this machine. However, it fits my needs very well. Now, some of the features that I like about this machine, it has its own auto set feature. Okay, so I don't go off of any of this. I just put the welder in auto set mode with 035 wire, crank that all the way up, and then all I have to worry about is my voltage settings right here on the machine. And you know, this is for steel. Okay, so I'll go down into here, and right here I'll look at my aluminum settings. Aluminum with a spool gun, 200 spool gun, which is what I use, and it even breaks it down, 40-43 or 50-56. Now, one thing that's not on here is 49-43, and we'll talk about that in just a second. But you know, the basics of this machine is, okay, 1/8 inch. Most of my boat welding is going to be 1/8 inch, so that's a number 5 on the voltage, and then 2 3/4 on the gun itself. See, the gun itself, this what was it, Spoolmate 200, I think is what it said. It has a feed rate right here on the gun itself. So even if I'm, you know, 25 feet away from the machine, I can adjust my my weld with my feed rate, and you know, on the fly I can get by with a lot doing that. Now, right now I'm welding some old aluminum. Okay, this is an airboat that, you know, had poly on it, and we've removed the poly, and we're welding up the 700 plus holes that's on the bottom of this hull. Sounds like an you know, quite the undertaking, right? Well, it is, but it ain't. It's not that big a deal. A couple afternoons, you know, a couple hours here and there, I'll get through it. It's no big deal. But there is a certain process that you have to, you know, partake in when you're welding old aluminum, and you know, I wanted to share that process with you. So before we get into our processes, I wanted to talk about wire and consumables for just a second. Okay, this is some cheap wire that I've got. This is 40-43. The 40-43 means that the first 2 numbers is basically the density, I think that's right, of the material. Okay, so most boat hulls are going to be 50-52. And there's a whole discussion off that about dissimilar metals and using the right wire, and hey man, you dig into that all you want to. I don't give a shit. Okay, I'm gonna throw some wire at it, I'm gonna turn up the heat, I'm gonna burn a weld in. If it cracks, if it breaks, hey, I got a welder. What the hell do I care? I can just weld it right back. 40-43 is going to be your go-to for almost anything that is, you know, important to where you want a nice smooth butter weld that will, you know, just glaze over nicely. It's really, really soft. Okay, so that 40 is a really soft alloy. And the 43, that second number, that's its corrosion resistance. So you want that number as high as possible. Well, there's also 53, 56, which is a much harder wire. And honestly, hey, spoiler alert, I've never welded with 53, 56. I've been welding aluminum with a spool gun for going on 8 years now, and I've never used it, okay? My go-to wire, and this is kind of hard to find, you'll have to dig around for it. I'm told that it is Hobart specific, but it's 4943, okay? So it's a little bit harder wire than 4043. You know, it's the same corrosion resistance, but that harder wire allows you to turn the heat up just a little bit more, okay? You can turn your wire feed up just a little bit more than, you know, a standard 43 wire. The tensile strength's just a little harder with this, but this is absolutely beautiful welds. And it does pretty good burning through some old stuff too. So I tell you what, let's get into the process real quick. I'm just gonna touch base on a few settings that I like to run on my machine. You know, basically I follow the machine's recommendations, but I bump the heat up just a little bit depending on my, depending on my angle of my piece, depending on, whether it's dirty, whether, I'm trying to do the impossible on some old aluminum, or maybe I'm burning some really thin stuff, and I'll bump that feed back just a little bit because I want it to burn hot. So I'm just going to spot the gun, pull my trigger, stop, pull my trigger, stop, pull my trigger, stop, and that uses a lot of heat, but the gun doesn't have a whole lot of time to penetrate the wire. And on some thin stuff, that's really a good trick to have in the bag because you don't want to burn all the way through, but let's face it, you can't always get to the nooks and crannies on these boats and get everything completely clean, okay? And welding aluminum, making sure that aluminum is completely clean inside and out will, decide whether you're going to have a good clean weld or not. And more times than not, determine whether your boat's going to leak or not, or whether you're going to be going back and fixing that weld, after you take it to the water and test it. So a few quick adjustments. A lot of times, if I am welding new aluminum, I will bump this feed up to a 6, okay, on my 4943 especially. That's just a little bit hotter. I can run that harder wire just a little hotter. And then my feed rate, I'm usually at a 3, not a 2 3/4. If I'm welding upside down, okay, I'll possibly bump that feed rate back down to 2 3/4 because I want the heat, I want the penetration, but I don't want to be throwing a whole lot of material over my head because, and it greatly depends on the gaps that I'm filling too. But I don't want to be throwing a hell of a lot of material over my head. I want to make sure that everything that I'm putting over my head has the opportunity to cool down and stay where I want it to versus sag down. So really pay attention to your feed rates if you're welding, vertically over top of your head. Now, gas and pressures and regulators and all things of that nature. 100% argon, absolutely no exception except no substitute. You cannot run 80/20. You cannot run a flux core, whatever the hell you're going to come up with because you don't understand. Aluminum requires 2 things: aluminum wire, a clean surface, and 100% argon. That phone shadow in my face is kind of annoying, isn't it? But so I have a double barrel set up back here. I actually got a 3rd barrel over in the corner. But I'll look right here on my regulator. Okay, so here is the quantity that is in the tank per pretty full tank right here. It's brand new. I've got 1,500 pounds in here. But over here on my gun regulator, looks like I'm running about 28 pounds. Okay, that varies. I go for about 25 pounds, and that 28 pounds is probably pretty close, but when I pull the trigger, it probably drops down to 25. So check that. Now, if you're in a windy situation, if you are welding outdoors, that's how I got my start. For those of you who've been following me for a long time, I didn't have this little shop 8 years ago. I started doing it right outside, man. Get in there and do it. Well, get you some cardboard, get you whatever paneling that you can get around you and block all of the wind. I mean all of it. And you know, it wasn't uncommon for me, and still to this day, I might grab a scrap sheet of aluminum and hold it over here while I'm, you know, welding, just to stop any little wind or what have you. And a good tip for that is to watch your argon flow. And you know, well, how do you do that? Argon's invisible. Okay, so just real quick, the welds that I've got sitting here, you can see this black burn. It's on top. It's on top. This one is pretty much all the way around. The determination between these three is the one that's on top here. I had the gun angled down quite a bit because I'm welding at an angle, okay? And I'm actually filling a hole in here, and we'll get into that technique here in just a second. But on this one, the black ring goes all the way around my weld. Now, I may have started at an angle, but when I finished, I was pointing straight out, and that let that argon burn all the way around there. Argon is a shielding gas, and basically what you need to know is this metal that is burning has to be entirely shielded, and that black that's burning on the outside of it is the fireball that is getting out from underneath that argon gas, more or less, okay? So if you've got a perfectly shielded spark, then you won't have no afterburn, okay? You won't have that black burn ring. But that black burn ring's okay. It's no big deal. It actually just wipes off here. You can see that even on some old aluminum, it'll just wipe off. You can wire brush it if you want to. It's no big deal. Real quick, while we've got this old boat here, if you can see, I've got my phone in selfie mode here, so not 100% sure if you can see what I'm looking at, but these are some old spot welds that the person before me done on the second poly that went on this boat. So they took poly off of the factory and done, you know, exactly what I'm doing. They went in and they spotted this, but I fear that they might have cleaned this off with a flat disc, and I could be wrong. It could just have been a higher abrasive wire wheel, but what I'm using to clean this off with, this is what I like to refer to as a death wheel, and I'm serious. Do not jack around with one of these because you'll die, okay? But no, if they get away from you, you're definitely going to damage, you know, some appendages, or I've had them, you know, get into my gut and leave a scar across my belly, and so hey, gloves, face shield, do not take this for granted because these things are dangerous. Not only that, all these little wire bits, okay, every one of those, once that head starts to fatigue, it's going to leave that wheel. And let's see if I got any on me right now. I just picked a few off a little while ago, but you know, they fly at you a couple 100 miles an hour and they stick. Okay, I've pulled them out of my face, I've pulled them out of my hands, I've pulled them out of, yeah, I've pulled them out of there. I have. It hurts. It hurts bad. So, as you can see, when we're out here welding, I try. There's one right there. Let me get my other hand. Pull it out of my shirt. There. Can you see that? Put it against my shirt here. That little dagger It stings. Don't take it for granted. But a full long sleeve shirt's going to keep you from A, getting sunburnt, B, is going to slow down that wire wheel things, as well as, you know, some other things. But I don't care if it's 110 degrees out, wear a long sleeve shirt. This face shield, I found at Harbor Freight for like $14, and I tell you what, I don't mess with safety glasses anymore. I grab this thing, okay, full face shield. You only got one set of eyes and ears and all that, right? So earplugs as well. But so when I'm looking to get ready to fill these holes in, okay, this is from the poly that I just removed. As you can see, they're tapped, all right? And one thing I wanted to show you, like this one right here, it's got a little bit of poly, a little bit of black poly laying right there. Now, I can't weld that, and there's 100 reasons why I can't weld that. But they all lead to contamination, okay? Not only the poly, but the oxidation of the aluminum. Now, this boat, as you know, you can well imagine, it had that plastic poly over top of it, and it held water in between there. So the oxidation is very easy to see on this aluminum. It's dirty, it's brown. You know, in this section here that has been taken off when they spot welded it, even it's oxidized, okay? Before we get into that right there, let me take you, I'll tell you what, let me go grab a brand new sheet of aluminum. This will work. Just this little piece right here, okay? This is from some stock that I bought last week, and I want to show you something real quick. If I can do this without dying, okay? Do as I say, not as I do. Okay, so this sheet looks shiny and pretty, right? But as you can see, that light reflecting off there, that shiny coating, okay? And then up at the top, that dull that I just used the wire brush on. This part up top is what aluminum is actually supposed to look like. This shiny coating on here, okay? That's actually a form of oxidation. Now, aluminum burns at 1200 degrees. However, that oxidation may not burn till upwards of, I don't know, 1600, 2000 degrees. And that's why welding aluminum is so complicated. Because people don't take the time to clean their material before they start welding. So, what I'm doing on these holes down through here, okay? Got another one that we're going to go with right here, okay? I'm going to wire brush it this way, and then I'm going to turn around, I'm going to wire brush it this way. Let's just go ahead and do it real quick. Okay, that's kind of hard to do with one hand. But that's just the beginning, okay? Now, I'm going to weld that hole up, but that hole has threads in it. Well, those threads have contaminants in it. So it's a 1/4 inch hole. I went with a, 32nd or so larger drill bit. Now, I'm going to come right in here over top of that hole, and I'm going to drill it out. Now, the surface of this hole is not only clean because it is cut with a piece of metal, it's also, we drilled out the threads. Now, the thickness of that piece of metal is clean. So now I have a clean surface where I can weld on. Now, we can't just throw a bead in there. Tell you what, let me get my marker out and I'll explain it here just real quick. And then I'll show you some of the welds that I've done over the last couple days. So here's the hole that we just cleaned out. We just drilled. When I bring my gun over here, gun angle is important. You want to be not exactly vertical, but pretty close, okay? And, you know, this isn't a bead, okay? This is more or less a spot weld, but when I shoot my wire in here, I don't want to go inside the hole, okay? If I go inside the hole and start burning, all it's going to do is burn the inside of that hole, and all of my material is going to go inside the boat. So I want kind of a bounce effect. I want kind of a burn, and then I want all my weld to fall into the hole. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take my wire and I'm going to shoot right here, and then I'm going to go around the hole, right on the edge of it, and right about the time where I get to here, where all of this liquid aluminum is right here and my gun is shooting that way, that hole's going to fill up, okay? I'm almost making a full circle, about 3/4 of a circle, I guess. And right about the time I get to right here, it's going to fill up. About that time, I'm going to move my gun right to the center, and I'm going to count 1, 2, almost 3, and then I'm going to let up. Now, the reason I'm doing that way is so that A, I don't burn through the hull of the boat. B, I get as many of the contaminants out as possible. And C, I want to build the weld up. I don't want a big crater in the center. Let me get a wire brush here real quick. Got an old one over here. Let's see, let me find one that's cratered out, because I had some issues yesterday with, I actually ran out of gas and didn't realize it. Let's see, yeah, right up here will work. So right here on top, this is one of, you know, a pretty good weld. You can see that the argon went all the way around it. Well, let's clean it up. Let's see what it actually looks like. Now you can see by me taking this wire brush all the way around there, see this dust? That brown black dust? So everywhere I took a wire brush, it actually pulled all those contaminants across from over here and into my weld. But since it's already welded, don't care. So on this weld, as you can see, I went all the way around there and it left just the slightest crater. There's no pinhole in the middle. Pretty good weld. Pretty happy with that. Wish I could do 700 of them exactly the same. But hey, things happen. You get fatigued. You run out of gas. You run out of consumables. Let's look at this one. Now, this one here is more of a side standing up weld, and you can see I started at the top and kind of pulled down, but I didn't stay there as long as I should have. So this weld looks really good on this side, but if I would have stayed there for just a little bit longer, I would have put a little bit more material in there. And since I didn't, there's a big crater in it, as well as a divot right in the center. And that divot's, where the wire was, but it's also where all the contaminants had pulled out of that hole and pulled up once I turned the gun off. So, it may be watertight, it may not be watertight. We'll probably have to come back and fix that one. I know there's probably going to be a handful of them on this boat once I get done. Right now, I'm just in kind of patch it mode, get this done. I'm not really concerned. This is mine. It's not for a customer or anything like that. So, hey, we'll let her go. We'll see. Maybe it's good. Maybe not. It may last 20 years without leaking. I don't know. Don't really care. But I know the difference between a really good weld and one that, may make the cut, it may not make the cut. But the number one thing that you can do when cleaning your welds is a stainless brush, okay? If it's flat material, a stainless brush. Or a wire wheel brush. Wire wheel brush works excellent. It's just kind of dangerous, all right? So use caution there. using a drill or a carbide cutter of some sort is excellent. Just be careful. Take your time, because once again, the bigger the hole, well, the more material it's going to take to fix it. And using a spool gun is tedious. Not as tedious as that orange machine up there that I don't have the patience for right now. But guys, I hope this has helped you. I hope that maybe you learned just a little bit of something about learning how to weld aluminum. Without further ado, I've got to get back to it. I've got about 400 holes left, and as John said, burning daylight. So I'll see y'all on the flip. Don't forget to wear those personal flotation devices, shoot straight, and hey, if you got a winter project, tell me about it below. If you got an Instagram account, go ahead and put that in there too, so I can keep up with your build throughout the fall. We'll see you guys. Stay safe.